I sort of think this sort of event is better if I just talk to you. So I'm going to go very quickly on the basis that I want to try and cover much more ground about stuff that really matters in terms of lessons and takeaway versus a story of selling soap for a living, which is how I made my money. So a bit of background. I wasn't very loved as a child. It's a very sad story. So my parents, who lived in Hong Kong, sent me away to a boarding school in Scotland. I'd also been born in Germany, just to confuse me. And my parents made me learn Chinese as a child. So far, miserable, absolutely miserable. Abandoned in a Scottish school with not much heating, so it didn't get much better. And the only upside is my school was more like a country club than an academic institution, so that was quite useful. And at the age of 17, my father then went bankrupt, so I had to get a job. I also had to get back home. So they begged my grandparents to pay for the flight for me to get back from Scotland to Hong Kong. And on the day I arrived home, I was told that the bailiffs would be coming the next morning, and I didn't know what they were. They didn't teach you about bailiffs at St Leonard's because most people had a lot of money. And so I was told not to bother unpacking, and could I start paying rent in 10 days' time, because they thought that that was, pretty reasonable. So of course I did the sensible thing. I decided I'd be a golf pro. And I announced this to my father, who didn't give me enormous buy-in. So what I did is I got a job that allowed me to play golf in the morning and to sell premiums and giveaways in the afternoon. And that was my first lucky break, because I learned about product working in Hong Kong and trading from a very early age of 18, where literally, China was your sourcing ground. And through Hong Kong, most major companies were sourcing premiums and giveaways. So I learned about leather for HSBC folders, and I learned about inserts to Kellogg's cereal packets and how to make 40 million items really, really quickly, and how to pack them. And I learned about how to deliver the irony of bicycles for Marlboro cigarettes, which was your reward in China if you smoked yourself to death and got enough vouchers. So quick learning curve. Then did that very, very traditional career move. I fell in love with a bloke and went to live in the Middle East. I hear that's quite standard. And in the Middle East, there are no recruitment agents, so I touted my somewhat slim CV around the office blocks and said, I was looking for a sales job. I knew a bit about sales. By then, I'd had precisely 0 sales training. And I'd been in Bahrain for 3 days when I got a call saying, I'd quite like to meet you. This Canadian, Jerry Arnold, from Bell Canada Corporation, was looking for somebody unbelievably gullible, and I clearly had that tattooed across my forehead when I was interviewed. And I took a job running 126 salespeople in 6 countries of the Gulf state, one of which I couldn't visit, and I sold Yellow Pages advertising space. Great learning curve. I learned about publishing. I bought 90 million tons of Yellow Pages. It's quite exciting. Made in Australia, printed somewhere else. And I ran this sales team that spoke many languages, most of which I didn't speak. I did have to sacrifice a lamb at one stage. It was because one of my Bedouin salespeople had insulted another by throwing his shoe at him. So that's quite also traditional, as you know. As a learning curve in business, I also learned balance sheets, P&Ls, and I had a half $500,000 US budget to spend on advertising, which is quite exciting when you actually don't know what advertising is. And I used to cry at night and work very hard, and I stayed there until the Gulf War came. And then my then fiance of HSBC got posted to New Zealand, and I said, that's lovely, I'll go and cycle for a while in New Zealand, nice country. And actually he then bloody well got a place to do an MBA at Cranfield, so we ended up here in England. Much against my desire, and I needed a job, and it was 1991, and the truth is there were no jobs in the last recession for salespeople, and I was very arrogant, and I made a very stupid mistake. First of all, turning down this fantastic job opportunity to sell sewing kits and shower caps. And I thought I'd get a job, and actually I ended up calling that company back and saying, I thought really, on reconsideration, I could make a future out of selling sewing kits and shower caps, and that truthfully was because I couldn't get a bloody job. And this Chinese factory who had approached me, who made what our industry called hotel amenities, is, in your language, the stuff that you nick and take home when you stay in a posh hotel. And I would like you to continue doing so. I always say not Molton Brown because I've never made any money out of them. And I still own 20% of a going concern called Pacific Direct. And the rough story goes that over the next 17 years, from the age of 23 to the age of 40, I went from a very lonely one-man band for the first 2 years, where I did speak most to myself, but I set myself a reward. I don't know if you have it at LBS, but at Cranfield on the business school site, they have the thing called the Butty Box, which means you get lunch, you know, everybody goes in and has lunch together, and it's pathetic, but that used to be my reward for making enough sales calls in the morning. I got to go and have a sandwich with some people, and then I'd go back to my miserable, lonely flat and make more sales calls and do every other job for the first 2 years of what was a startup business, Pacific Direct, as a one-man band. I can honestly still tell you that the first 2 years of Pacific were the loneliest years of my life, the hardest, and I wouldn't do it that way again because we didn't really know about mentoring, and I was 23, and I just thought that if I sold relentlessly and kept listening to the customer, I could develop a product, and I was so wrong, it's pathetic, and somehow we survived. The royal we, that is, I did everything, and we did 108,000 in our first year, and Lara did 360,000 sales in her second year, and then realized that I couldn't cope with working nearly every hour of the day, so I went the traditional recruitment route, and I employed the second noisiest person on my hockey team, Rachel. It's quite cheap, doesn't involve headhunting costs, and I've generally found that the outspoken ones can sell. And actually my recruitment route at the hockey club worked quite well, so I employed my second member of staff there a year later. She was a very, very bright Margaret Oakley, PhD, who was returning to work and happened to be the wife of the most intelligent surgeon in the local area who liked hockey. Now, why am I telling you that? I'm telling you that because actually, fundamentally, my first 2 utterly geniusly planned recruits were probably the luckiest piece of the puzzle. And unlike many, many small companies who employ friends or don't really sound out and think through their first recruits, you create so much potential for disaster. I didn't have that, and I think by sort of, in a bizarre way, studying Rachel's skill set, my first employee, and getting to know Margaret over a year before I employed her, I fundamentally lucked out at getting 2 great team members that helped me build this little business very quickly. So in the year 3, we did £880,000 of business. And we were making, pretty good money. So the business grew, and at this stage, by the way, we were selling just a bit more than sewing kits and shower caps, but fundamentally, I was learning all that I needed to learn as I went along by, in effect, asking the customer what it was they needed and providing solutions to their pain. That actually is a translation for the rather inelegant word of sales. It's a conversation. And I think the most powerful message that I hope you get, because I am incredibly biased, is that if you can learn to sell, I promise you that you can make relentless mistakes. I have proven this, and yet somehow you come out the other side with profit and with the lessons and maybe some scars and some interesting moments, but actually going into a business and employing the right people from the get-go, which is not easy, and I know how lucky I have been, but also having this skill of, actually the only skill to be fair, of selling, that's an immense asset. So for any of you that haven't been trained in sales, think very hard about formalizing your competency in negotiating in sales. I've been asked to share with you lessons, and I think I feel so passionate about it. I hope I've communicated that well. So the sewing kit shower cap company listened to its customers, and it had no business plan, and we just kept innovating and providing solutions. And somebody said to me, can you do shampoo? And I said, well, I haven't done shampoo before, but what do you mean? And he said, well, I'm frustrated because I can only buy shampoos and shower gels with solid coloured wall bottles, and I'd quite like to have a clear bottle. I think it would look nicer. And I said to Tony Hellwood, I haven't done it before, let me go and ask. But if I can provide a solution, ask the basic questions, how big's the business? And I'm suddenly thinking, God, they use a lot more shampoo than they use shower caps. And actually, disaster struck very early in my first massive shampoo deal, because we bought 30,000 shampoos in China, and they were delivered, and I was so excited that I drove them down to Tony myself, and was thrilled with the outer package and my brand name on the box. It's very exciting, 500 shampoos. And he called me just as I was driving away, a little bit less than chuffed, because he discovered that all my shampoo bottles were half full. And that's disappointing when they're clear, because it looks like they're used. And the reason for that, I discovered overnight, was that the Chinese guy filling the shampoo had only got half the fill for 30,000 full bottles, 15,000 full ones, and he thought anyway it was enough to wash your hair with. I have to say that did hurt at the time. And I think it's a good example of the resilience quality that you may have to have as you learn detail, and as you learn that it's not going to go that smoothly, and it's also probably not wise to celebrate, and it's probably a good idea to QC the goods before you deliver them to the customer. So there will be bad days, but you have to look at yourself and you have to take that on the chin, because on my purchase order, it did not say to what level I wanted that shampoo filled. I am rubbish at detail, but I got a lot better, a lot quicker when it was going to cost me money. What I also did is I got Margaret. So think about your skill set is a second very important message, because we all do have strengths and weaknesses. It's very easy for me because the only thing I can do is sell. So everything else somebody else can do. And I promise you that if you can define the roles for as you evolve your business, and you really define them clearly around what the job is that you need somebody to do and the skill set that they are going to have, and then you worry about finding the right person, you are much more likely to find the right person, and trust that you're going to not overlap in the expertise, but actually there's the big issue, and trust. Can you trust somebody else? Because as you grow and you build a business, you will have to let go, and you will not be able to do benevolent dictator if you're going to grow a considerable company. Pacific Direct grew very quickly, and I got a bit carried away, but let's just say I kept selling, and Rachel kept selling, and we did quite well. And by about, so it was 1991 when we started, and in 1996, European cosmetics regulations changed, and we had to put labels on our bottles. And my Chinese factory said that he didn't want to do that. I said, Dave, that's a bit of a problem. So I then thought, well, it'd be a really good idea to go into manufacturing, about which I know nothing and I like nothing. Another one of my genius decisions around strategy. I didn't know that was strategy, by the way. And we ended up going into toiletries manufacturing, which was again a piece of luck, because what it ultimately meant is that when we became very big, we were a global manufacturer and supplier, and we could compete on a global scale. It wasn't my decision, it was somebody else's in the EU's to stuff me up, and I had to provide a solution quickly. So by 1999, Pacific Direct was 221 people. We had 5 international offices. I'd set up a factory in China. I bought an organization in the Czech Republic, which actually, when I visited it, I discovered was 2 garages joined together making tubes, and a liar called Martin Samek, who is basically as good as my second brother, who sold me the tubes when he didn't even have the bloody machine to make them. That is enterprise. In order to deal with Jarvis's buying 36 hotels, Martin and Oliver slept in the roof of the garage to continue tube supply, because every 18 minutes, the box of tubes that fed the one machine they had ran out, and one of them would go downstairs and put the new box up overnight for 31 days in a row. How hard are you willing to work for your enterprise? Martin, in the end, owned 10% of the entire global equity of Pacific Direct. Had he not got up at night, he wouldn't have had that opportunity. So how hard are you willing to really work for your business? I cannot underline enough that not enough entrepreneurs talk about the very, very serious hard work and the importance to be, I think, fit and healthy in running your enterprise. So don't discount the importance of that. I'm not going to tell you that there's work-life balance because it's bollocks. If you want to run a big, successful, high-growth international company, you're going to bleed a bit, you're going to sweat a bit, you're sure as hell going to cry, and there's going to be some really terrible days, but actually you own those days, and on reflection it makes a very good story. So what do I think about Pacific? In 1999 I looked around clutching at straws to find somebody that could help with this mayhem that was completely out of control. We were in a cash flow bind, I'd grown the thing too quickly. So I applied to Cranfield, to the Business Growth Development Program, in the full belief that I was going on the program with lots of other people who were having the same problems I was. And of the 57 people in the room, I was the only one trying to slow down. Because actually I was pretty much the only salesperson. And on that course I discovered that I was actually running the 57th fastest growing company in Britain independently, year on year average, Dun & Bradstreet independent report, which I would never have known because I had never then yet read any business magazines. So for all of those overqualified geniuses in the room, let's just recap my education. And let's talk through my very long list of qualifications, which includes only the W.H. Smith's business section for books. And you don't get a badge. That's how I built my business until 1999. And then I went to a course at Cranfield, as I say, and I wrote my first business plan. So you can get 9 years into a business, do £4.5 million worth of sales, make 664,000 quid, have 221 staff, 5 or 6 offices, can't remember, a couple of factories, and be utterly miserable. I would have sold Pacific Direct for 50p. Even though I was making that money. And the reason for that is I'd got into that fatal position of not doing what I liked doing anymore, but dealing with all the stuff as the business grew that meant I had to be responsible as I am in terms of putting my team first, but no longer getting the chance to do what I'm good at. So whatever you do, there are these steps that now I have seen the education bit. I've seen some of those graphs that do this, and I know some of the words that talk about stages. But ultimately, there's the shit stage, and then there's the growth stage, and then there's... It's not really difficult to work out from there, is it? But you're in a competition, you're in a race, and you need really good team players. Can you just visualize the Formula One changing tyres? Everybody visualize that? 10 years ago, how long did it take to change 4 tyres on a Formula One car? Anybody know? Oh, you're all real geeks. That's really sad. Seconds. How many seconds? Come on. 10 years ago, yes.
It took about 12 seconds.
About 12 seconds. That's exactly right. I think it was 12.4, actually, depending on what time of the year. Well, how long does it take now? 2.8. 2.8. So what's the lesson? Get better at what you do if you practice and stay focused on it. What do the red arrows do every time they go out and they have a bit of a fly, they come back, they go home? No? They do a complete review of the delivery system, of what they delivered to the audience that day. And they refine it and they refine it and they refine it. And my best analogy is that thing about taking 4 wheels off a car, sticking some petrol in, and off we go. And I think that's a great business analogy, because if you have the right team players in the right areas, with the right strengths and weaknesses and a very, very clear role definition, you might get away faster next time. Does that make sense to people? I hope you remember that, because I think it's a very powerful picture. And I think it really relates to the fact that the other part of the business that I had done naturally through absolute paranoia and fear is I had studied the competition like a religious zealot, because I wanted to know if they sneezed before I did. And in Britain, we think that's not very nice because we're a bit cricket-like, and it's bollocks again, because the amount of stuff that you can learn from what the competition are doing and from what actually you notice that they're not doing, so you might exploit benefits that you do. First thing I did is I started to understand that they were all giving delivery free at £250, so I worked out my average orders, and I worked out I could give free delivery at £200, point of difference. At every stage, I wanted to beat the competition in service terms. And if you don't study them, how can you know that you're going to do that? So treat every element of your business as a race, as wanting to be the best, and set outrageously high standards from the moment that you recruit, and tell people on the way in. So this was my favorite line in the recruitment environment. At Pacific Direct, you will never work harder. You will give your ounce of flesh. I'll probably take more, by the way. Hopefully you won't notice. I really hope you enjoy the journey. And if at any time you're having a problem, please come and see me. So nobody can claim that they didn't know it was going to be horrific. And the ones that said yes, because clearly I would smile when I had asked them whether that would be a problem or not, they knew what they were coming in for. They knew the ride. And I was very lucky to still own 99% of Pacific when I sold it in 2008 for £20.2 million, which, by the way, I didn't know was that exceptional. I hadn't really looked around me. I was a bit busy selling soap. So continual improvement, the team effect, the race and the competition. Setting your expectations early. And I'm not going to bore you shitless about the importance of communication, but I am going to tell you that it is boring to talk about communication. So it's much, much better to innovate with your communication and to do it differently. One of the most powerful things you can get is a scrap of paper and a group of people into a room who write on their scrap of paper 3 great ideas for something we should do better, something you might not know about, Lara. I thought I'd tell you. And by the way, did you know this great thing that so-and-so did the other day? I've had everything from, could we have more teaspoons in the kitchen? And the real reason was because Penny wanted to get back to her desk quicker because she ran customer services and she therefore wanted to make the tea and coffee round quicker. All the way through to a guy who we employed as an apprentice, and he said, you know, why don't you use the traffic light system? And I'm thinking, piece of paper traffic light system. I better go and ask what that means because I don't know anything about this stuff. And he said, well, look, I've got this stock list that you've given me, and what you said is if I can work out how we can focus better. And I just said, so what I did is I sorted it and I just highlighted anything red that hadn't been moving in the last X many weeks. I thought, you're a bloody genius, lad. So we then started applying the speed color chart to lots of the Excel. I ran the business on Excel until it was £4.5 million. We had no systems. That was quite cool. I was quite good at Excel. But it was just another one of my mistakes. We did invest in a CRM, but the point is that communication example of just innovating and getting people to focus on the right stuff is utterly vital. So not just the idea of the scrap of paper, but actually the brilliance of getting your team on board and really giving them the voice and not paying lip service to it. I mean, I cannot believe how many times I hear, inverted commas, management saying, no, we include our team in everything. And I say, oh. And then you ask a few very, very simple questions and they'll admit, actually, well, no, we don't really do it that way round here. Oh, really? So people don't really have clear targets. And, you know, at the most basic level, we're in the real world, it's competitive. Employ people that want to be in the A-grade area of your organization and accept nothing better, nothing worse. Because A-grade players make for A-grade teams, which make for A-grade results. And I say it, and it's so simplistic to say, oh my God, is it hard to do. So the other thing that you need to spend an unbelievable amount of time on is getting recruitment right. And how do you do that? Well, that's the lottery. But you can play the lottery and you can minimize the risk by being utterly rigorous about your culture and about investing in looking in the market and about networking relentlessly and about having really clear ways of sense checking. Are you employing a knife-wielding maniac from hell or otherwise? I mean, we use things like Thomas International for psychological tests, but the truth is we only really applied 10% of it, but it did stop us making some wrong decisions. There was a whole nother 90% of stuff that we did to make sure that we were getting the right fit people for the right role, that they could work with other members of the team. Those things are so important, particularly when literally you need to set up a Singapore office. So what do? Oh, Singapore office, it's so glorious. Meet Shacey, she's it. Well, where did Shacey come from? One of the most powerful things I can tell you that, again, I learned far too late, but I apply with absolute vigor, is I will pay a huge price for the leading salesperson in any territory of any country from my competitors to start a new office in a new territory. Is that fair? Is it right? It's your choice. But if you want an accelerated start in a marketplace, pay the price, get the best salesperson that's been in your industry, and you will have a massive head start. The idea of employing, an English person in Singapore is frankly barking mad. And the same applies for the reason that I had a Scotsman in Scotland. The Americans are a law unto themselves, let's leave it aside. Internationalizing your business, possibly, what can I tell you? I don't know how we became international, other than I just managed to cobble together this awesome team of people who understood what Pacific Direct was about, and they bought into the vision and the mission that were very clear about being number one at what we did. And I am so proud of the delivery and the trust that we had in people in, as I say, 9 offices, in many cases one-man band in the initial days that then grew. And those people are the difference between your international success and failure. So how often are you going to touch base with them? There were nights when I might be at an event like this, and then I would be driving home for an hour or two, and I would call, literally, in order, depending on the time zone, maybe 6 other members of my team in different places around the world to touch base at least on a weekly basis as the owner of the business with those people leading those organizations. And in the morning at 6, I would ring China on the way to work because they're the first ones up, or Australia then after we open that. And you just work your way. You can work 24 hours of the day. You don't have to if you put great people in their places, but you have to look after those people. I don't think I need to summarize, but it's about selling, it's about flicking hard work, it's about not holding on to too much equity, just enough to majorly control what you're doing. It's a competition, it's teamwork, it's all the usual stuff, but I hope that sort of gives you a picture, and obviously it was all very easy. Are there any questions? Yes?
Great presentation.
Thank you.
My question is, how do you make transition from one woman company to big organization?
It's a big organization from one.
First stage when you apply to recruits, and what do you follow when you recruited these people? Did you follow your gut feeling, intuition, or did you try to scrutinize them over interview questions?
Well, I mean, with Rachel, who genuinely was on the same hockey team as mine, I'd watched her for, 2 seasons to see what kind of character she was. And I actually trapped her in my car one day, so she had to put up with me for half an hour. So I could just listen and find out what kind of human being she was. And actually, because I was only 25 when I employed her, I sort of called, I said to her, I'd quite like to come and talk to you, but I know you still live at home. And I sort of was interviewed by her dad, who worked for NatWest. And I have to say, that still, in my mind, is the biggest people decision I've ever made. Because, I'm 25, and I've always felt that once you employ somebody, you pay their mortgage, right? Their family depend on you. You come second after your first employee. And then when you've got a second one, you come third. And that's the way it works. And the answer is I went with my gut. I knew she could do the job. And with Margaret, I'd watched her do fundraising for the hospital with her genius husband, who are just some of the most generous people you'll ever meet. And I sort of pinched myself that she even said yes and joined me. But Margaret liked her work so much that she used to forget to pick up her children at the school gate. Genius. Yeah? Yes, sir.
Sorry, if you could just wait for the...
Does it help if I read back the question into the mic?
We can get them on the mic.
Okay, cool.
Just for the video.
So you gave a lot of importance to recruiting the right people to grow your business. How did you make those decisions? I mean, did you give passion and hard work that they could offer more importance than qualification? Or how would you...
You're going to hate this, all of you. I employ on attitude, not aptitude. And in the early days, actually, you really can do that because you're not looking for genius skill set. But then I'll tell you a story about Richard Percival, which kind of counteracts that and might give you some hope for the future. So when I finally grew up and I went to Cranfield and I came out and I'd been miserable and I decided I needed this plan, part of my plan was get a bloody general manager, go back to selling. So we did employ a headhunting agency because I was convinced that that was the right way to go. And we ran an immensely challenging recruitment. I had an argument for 7 weeks with the Sunday Times because I wanted to imagine an advert is usually printed with lines like that. Well, I bought the 1/8 page, but I printed the words new perspective and then I did the advert like that, right? It took me 7 weeks to say it's my space, I'll do what I like. And the compromise was I had to write new perspective because then it didn't look like they'd printed it wrongly. That was what they were worried about. We got 880 applications for that job, which was more than Hoggett Bowers had ever had. And I just liked the idea because we'd appealed to the nation in terms of our culture. And all I laughed about is all these people reading the ad like this. That was us, slightly looking at things differently. And that's very important. And Richard and then 5 others came to a final interview day when they were whittled down. He was number 2 in Reebok. And he was so impressive, by the way, when he came for his day's interview. He'd memorized every member of my team's name in the UK office. And he'd had the cunning to be able to get an organogram and their pictures and know them before he turned up. And I never knew that until he turned up. And we then sat down, he made his presentation, he met the different teams, blah, blah. We then met, I knew I was going to have to pay him a lot of money, and I had to pay him £126,000 plus his car and all the other stuff at a time when I was paying myself 24. So maybe there's hope, right? There's got to be other people like me. So the answer to your question, I think, is I knew Richard was right and he had the right attitude and he really wanted to be in Pacific. And he was the first person actually that had done the deal about he was going to earn 5% equity over a year of proof. But actually then September the 11th happened. He didn't join until a later period because he had a long notice, and he was the first one to volunteer for redundancy because he knew when September the 11th happened we were in a car crash because people didn't sleep in hotels. We went from 88% usage and occupancy to 6% in the night. So it's quite hard. I think you're taught to deal with 20%. Try 82, 60. It's just horrific. Yes. At the back. Should we run up there?
Yeah.
On the right. I think it's...
You mentioned that you felt that it was a mistake for you to retain 99% of the business. Can you just elaborate on that? Why was that a mistake and how you would do it differently again?
I'm told I have to say it's a mistake because nobody else does it. So I regurgitate that, and I always wonder if someone will ask. And the answer to the question is that I can't honestly say that my team would have worked any harder because these people were mad, right? They loved working at Pacific. They liked working with each other. They had a riotous time, and I can't believe anybody could have worked harder in that organisation. But I'm told that, I should have had a better equity structure, and that maybe I would have, attracted higher caliber people but actually my team were world class. And so do I now, and honestly now when I have businesses, I make sure that there's an equity pot, or that when it's a, when it's a considerable shareholding of my own and I can afford to do that, because I'm still greedy and controlling, and I would really advocate that. But I still think there should be a management pot, because I'm told you can, but people should be made to put skin in the game. It's not a gift. They either earn it or they pay for it, because else it's not real. To them, it hasn't cost them any pain like yours has to build. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
99%. Don't get me wrong, I also gave away 2 million quid in cash to the team that I hadn't given equity to, which is the most enormously fun thing to do. I mean, people collapsed. It was very funny, with joy, and it's an incredible honour to, pay for someone's mortgage. But they'd earned it. I just hadn't done it the right professional way. Yeah, and I've learnt that lesson. I won't do that again. Yeah. There was a question up here.
Thank you. I really enjoyed the presentation.
You're welcome.
I run a small company and we're 7 people, and I'm not a salesperson. We've got 1.5 salespeople and I'm the half. How does one motivate somebody to go out there and sell? Because I don't think it's only about the money. In fact, it may not at all be about the money. I want to tell you a story.
Well, if it's not a lot about the money, it's not a salesperson.
So I used to work at IBM, and I went to this sales day where they rewarded the top IBM salesperson, and the reward was a vat of £1 coins, and he had 60 seconds to take as many of the coins as he possibly could, and he was seriously considering swallowing them in order to take more.
So that was a salesperson.
So how do I reward salespeople to get the most out of them?
I mean, genuinely, first of all, if you honestly don't believe you're a salesperson, Company Shortcuts, which is my sort of legacy learning company, which is teaching sales in Britain, has an event on the 16th of October, and you will never learn more in a day. And you need to know how to sell to run a sales group, or actually to see what because the sales strategy is the engine for the growth of your business, and nobody can argue with me over that. If you don't sell, you don't have a business. You don't need a bloody logo. You don't need a website. You don't even need a business card. You have to sell something, right? So to motivate salespeople, fundamentally and genuinely, I will not employ somebody that isn't money hungry. That's what drives salespeople. They like bloody gadgets and fast cars and big diamonds. And there is absolutely nothing wrong with that, as long as I earn more than they do. I'm serious. I'm really brutally. I also think, though, that you've got to understand that there are different types of salespeople, and there is, I suspect I'm out of date, but the classic hunter-farmer, the hunter is the one that you want out, highly revved up, and you want to take anything that involves box filling away, because characteristically, we, and I count myself amongst hunters very proudly, are shit at filling in boxes. We don't do it, we don't like admin, right? We have to play by the rules, and we have to really set out what the rules are. But if you give 6 sweeper uppers to a great hunter, you'll sell more than if you give a hunter the job that has some admin with it. Do you see what I mean? Because what they like is they like selling. Target-wise, I absolutely don't set targets that aren't achievable. I just see that as a pointless exercise. But it's an agreed target with qualified lead understanding. It's a grown-up process. It's a professional review of the market, and it's and it's not a forced upon ridiculous. We'll grow at 10% this year. Whoopee! Isn't that really exciting? It keeps the shareholders happy. If you can grow at 500%, grow at 500%. Put the structure in. You may not be able to. You've got to cash flow the affordability of structure, but truthfully, we're so unambitious in our sales approach, and we don't target. Don't employ salespeople that aren't willing to starve on their starvation salary, because they should live and die by what they make in selling. That's what it should be. It's what they, and I do advocate the American model, which is highly commission orientated. I think it works. Britain, we're so wet. We really are. What else? So selling, motivation. Ritual beatings. what I mean, I meant ritual meetings. And so what I really mean is actually, I mean going out with the salespeople and sense checking that they're speaking the right language. So if I came into your organization and met your salesperson tomorrow, can they pitch to me the real vision and purpose of what your business, your product, and your service is? Because if they can't, you haven't even got a sales team. You've got somebody selling somebody else a message, which is already creating chaos because it's not a product you want to deliver. Do you see what I mean? And so at the most basic level, genuinely, there's some great sales books. The girl that runs Company Shortcuts, my partner, has a sales book. It's Secret of Sales. I can circulate the link. You know, and basic steps of the sale. Every sale has a process of, you know, going out, fact-finding, making a presentation of your business, listening to what the customer's got to say about the product, identifying and qualifying the opportunity, making a recommendation, putting in a proposal, that is, and by the way, at every stage before any of those, asking for the order, which, by the way, girls, we're shit at doing, and if we did, we'd wheat them hands down because we do all the other bloody work, and then they sneak in and ask first, and we don't get it, right? I really focus on sales. I mean, I could be here all night on sales.
Thank you.
Behind you.
Hi, thanks for the talk. Taking from his question, there's another aspect to the question that this guy over here asked. How do you keep the people who work for you glued together, and at the same time, because they are so money hungry or whatever you take them for, aligned to the vision of taking that time down from 12.8 to probably 2.8, taking from the analogy that you mentioned earlier?
Sorry, I'm not still, I understand the second half of the question, sorry.
Second half is,
How do I keep them aligned?
To the vision of getting the time down from 12.8 to 2.8. So that's an analogy that I'm taking.
It's a team event, right? And actually, what always happens in organizations, and it's a great question in the sense that it's, you know, it's ridiculous, but it happens time and time again, is you have the great divide by the prima donna salesperson. But actually, what the leader then has to remind prima donna salesperson is you ain't going to deliver it without that side of the room. Right, and that's where, I mean, we had some issues like that in some of the different businesses, and culturally there was stuff I had to learn about facilitation exchanges and having a conversation and saying, you stupid bugger, if you keep promising that, they ain't going to deliver because it's not what we do, right? And having a real respect. So answers, practical things. Do your customer service people go out with your sales team to see what they do? Do they understand how bloody tough it is running around with a pile of samples that weighs a sodding ton? It's not as glamorous as all that, I can tell you. And as soon as they go, oh, flip. Actually, I'll just stay in customer service. It's a lot more comfortable. I'll sit down here. It's very nice. Thanks very much. Take calls. And then, you know, does the sales administrator go out and meet the customer? And is the sales administrator part of the commission unit that the salesperson's earning? Are they motivated to get the quote out quickly? It's a joined-up event. Everybody should be rewarded. I think that's really important. And at different stages of your business, you should set different reward mechanisms to motivate the team. So in 2004, my team set their own target, make £1 million in 12 months, I'll take you to Barbados. That's what we did. Government then charged me another 17 grand for tax, bastards. True. Yeah? But what can you do that's creative? But the team set the target, not me. So you've got to start with an open organisation. And we are really poor at that. You know, my team knew if we made money, if we lost money on a monthly basis. We had Richard, genius Richard from Reebok, bought a process where we had a company weekend away in January every year. And it happened, by the way, when we were 6 people in a caravan in France. Sadly, 2 of the staff got frozen into their caravan. I didn't learn it, and I couldn't understand why they were late for the morning meeting. But we did it on the cheap, right? You know, they did end up in Barbados, those 2 people, a few years later. But the learning thing of putting everybody in a room and saying, here's our vision for the year ahead. And in Richard's case, he invented the Magnificent Seven and had the music and the razzmatazz. And I bit my tongue as he employed a bloody video lot and all this Reebok bollocks of noise and expense, because I thought, well, he's the new general manager, I've got to trust that. And he set us on such a great path for the year ahead, and everybody knew what they were doing. So from then on in, every year we had company weekend away, and we announced the goals for that year ahead, and it was so powerful. That is priceless stuff. You know, so that's communication, but it's innovation. It's not just dull. Let's all turn up to a meeting. Let's not. Yes, sir.
Fantastic and very inspiring topic.
Thank you.
Yeah, we just want to capture your question for the video.
Sure. Lara, very inspiring and fantastic talk which I witnessed. Personally, I understand, you know, sales is a very, very tough job, and I've been on the other side of the fence where I've made
Not
products.
if you like it.
Yeah, if you like field operations, I've made products, I can understand selling is equally tough if making is tough. Now, coming from a different perspective, the channels of shopping are changing. You know,
Yeah,
we are shifting
absolutely.
and we are going to online, and we're shifting channels.
Yes.
Now, in such a setup, who are those virtual dedicated sellers which you foresee?
That's a great question. Were you in Pimlico Fresh this morning having breakfast at all? No? Because I was speaking with Nicola about how selling is changing, right? And we want to be at the cutting edge of teaching the new changing, because I think a lot of it is going to be about inbound sales team. And you've actually reminded me, and it's not without being timely, I want to introduce you to somebody very special who's going to teach you a bit about selling right now. And I just warn you, because he's a very interesting character, and actually I think it's an important lesson that about persistence, which is the point I'm going to end on, because I think we are running out of time. So Alistair's going to present a product to you in about 2-3 minutes, but I'll tell you that he's very dangerous. Not just balding, but he's a stalker. And maybe this is a lesson in how to tie down finance into your business. So Alistair approached me, what is nearly 3 years ago, and the persistence with which he put into the mission to meet me initially was impressive, to say the least. And then him dealing with the, I guess one might call it the Lara treatment now that you've met me, which was a list of 19, these are really shit things, Alistair, go away and no, I'm not investing in your crap product, company. Bounced back 2 years later, he grabbed me at a trade show and he said, let me show you what I've done, and he's going to present that product to you, and I'm now very proud to tell you that I'm a 49% shareholder in Gate 8 Luggage. So I want him to, as payback, to present to you the best piece of travel luggage for executives that we're working on. And if there's any of you that spot a fault, or you think we could do better, or you have an experience about luggage that we could learn from, or ultimately if you want to buy one, that would pay me back too. But the point is that it's a lesson in resilience and in persistence. And if you don't have those business qualities, start practicing them now, because it will make you money. At the beginning of this year, I think we were selling very few of these products. This product is now rocketing. Alistair, take it away.
Thank you.
Try not to bash it. You're aware.
Okay, can you hear me? Honestly, I'm not that dangerous. Okay, so I'll be very brief, and I will do the product demonstration. But I think it's important just to put a bit of context around how I met Lara. I was quite a boring, probably still am, but quite a boring IT consultant for many years, doing lots of short-haul trips, Europe, some nice places like Edinburgh, Glasgow, etc. Delivering fantastic IT solutions, addressing all the problems. I wasn't in sales, I was in delivery. And it was during those years that I began to experience the frustrations that the airlines were imposing on predominantly the business traveller, but I was also doing some leisure travel. Typically 1 to 3 business days a week, which accounts for about 86% of all business travel. And the company that I was employed by were often using the budget airlines as well, the value for money airlines, and they started to impose even stricter regulations. So the single bag carry-on policy. So I would stroll up with my, in those days, slightly larger laptops, my garment bag, and I would have to pay the €60, whatever the fee was, because I had 2 bags. So I started to think about how I could address those challenges, and maybe there was an entrepreneurial spirit within me, and hopefully Lara will kind of release that and show my true potential. So I started to think about what I could do, so I put some designs together, and as Lara mentioned, I flew out to Hong Kong, went to a fair, met some factories, went into China for a couple of weeks, and then bumped into Lara's brother. And I was at that point exploring how I could grow the business. I thought I had a great product. I thought it was fantastic. I thought this is going to make my millions, you know, in 6 months and put the full-time job in IT behind me. I was very wrong. Alec, Lara's brother, suggested that I speak to Lara, so I went to Lara, full of enthusiasm, highly motivated. And it was at that point Lara gave me the 19-point failure plan. As you can see, Lara is very, very straight talking, and I went away, and as Lara said, I addressed all of those challenges. And we came up with the brand Gate 8, and this is our hero product. And as Lara said, you know, from selling as low as 1 to 2, 3 bags a month, we're now up in, you know, nearer the 100 bags a month. So it's growing fast. It's quite scary. Had some great publicity recently. We were in the Sunday Mail, we were in the Times, going to be in the Telegraph. So people are really interested in what, not only the product, but more the story and what Lara is doing, you know, to help kind of startups like myself. And I'm obviously very, very thrilled and very proud to have Lara on board now. So I'm going to present the product now. So this product, I do waffle. This product is all airline compliant. It is carry-on for all the airlines, and it addresses the single bag carry-on policy. So the Gate 8 product, they all come with, for example, the wash bag that you can put all your toiletries in, so you can negotiate airport security. On the back here, if you are travelling with laptops up to 17-inch can go in here, but equally now we are catering for and have the pockets for the iPads, netbooks. All your technology is fully protected. So once you've got through airport security and you've boarded the flight, you want to work in your seat, or alternatively you're at the hotel, need to go to the conference, the exhibition, you have the option of zipping this off, leaving your garments in the hotel, so you can now travel off to the office, the meeting. Your garments are now fully protected and ready to wear. 2 zips either side. You unfold once and you can release the Gate 8 shirt blouse carrier. So inside here, it comes with a very clever folding board. So you fold your shirt, blouses around the board, and we've put on the back a very handy travel checklist, so you won't forget any of those essential items. Your shirts and blouses will be ready to wear, and if you need formal ties, etc., they're also the tie loops there, and there are accessory pockets in there. So that's your shirts, blouses, etc., and this now hangs straight into the wardrobe. So it comes with a hook, like so. Hopefully this will hold up here. Yep, so now your garments are ready to wear. So these hangers go on the hooks there. There is a shoe pocket at the base as well, and for your undergarments you have these pockets like so. And for the return trip there is a laundry pocket on that side like so. And this all now just neatly packed back together like so. You put the hook back in its pocket. I'll leave that there for now. Just fold it up like so. Put the shirts, unwashed, unworn shirts back in like there. Like so. And then this, obviously, it's on wheels, so it has the handle there. You have the option, if you're only going between perhaps exhibition halls and you want to avoid unzipping the laptop bag on and off, comes with a sleeve on the back. So you have the option of travelling like so. Thank you very much.
Yeah, lovely. I think we're out of time. We're going to see. Thank you very much.
My pleasure. Thank you.
I know you're going to be around for people to. Thanks very much for sticking around for a bit. Thanks very much.
Thank you.